Sutton Leadership Show, lighting the way with real leaders, real stories, and real impact. Because when leaders stop growing, the darkness wins. All right, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today we have Steve Woodruff. Steve is on a one-person mission to eliminate the ineffective elevator pitch and to replace it with something that truly engages, a memory dart. Steve is the author of 2 books on communication clarity and has a 40-year business track record of refining messages in sales, marketing, training, consulting, and writing. He has been called the King of Clarity, which is as close to royalty as he'll ever get. And with that, welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Drew, for having me on.
Yeah, man. I'm actually super pumped about this conversation. We met through a guy named Brian Wallace. Brian and I are on a mission to redo the Modern Business Conference. More on that in the show. But you know what happens at the show at every conference is just you're inundated with elevator pitches left and right. My favorite failure story of the elevator pitch. I'm standing there. It's just a business networking event, and a guy takes his business card and sticks it in my shirt pocket. Like complete violation of personal space. Walks straight up to the group, sticks it in my pocket, sticks it in the guy next to him like a mailbox. And I was like, oh, favorite interaction ever. I'm going to tell this story for the rest of my life.
Well, it was memorable.
It was memorable. And I think the guy, it was a paintball. He had set up a new paintball thing a couple of towns over. And I have kids. I like paintball. So but I've never visited him, but I talk about him literally for the last 3 years. Favorite. Do you have a favorite fail like that?
Pretty much every single introduction. I've had almost nobody. I'm sorry to make you spit your coffee out.
So hard.
But,
okay.
For something we do all the time, how many times a week, a month, a year do we have to answer the question, what do you do? It is shocking how ineffective we are at that. And very rarely, but occasionally, somebody does a good job. And those are the ones I remember, is the people that do a good job. So there's a gal here in Nashville that I met at a networking event. And she said, she's a lawyer. What's more memorable than a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And she said, I'm JK. I went to law school, so you don't have to.
Ooh, that's tight.
I've never forgotten her. I've forgotten lots of lawyers before, but it was such an interesting little twist that it stuck. It was a great memory dart. And I don't know how many hundreds of people I have forgotten since then, but not her.
But not her.
Nope. Yep.
I'm reminded as you say that, I'm an engineer by training, which means I consider all information to be equally valid. And I would like to tell you about it.
No.
No. That's correct. That is correct. And so I'm a recovering engineer. And, but as I was going on my journey of recovering engineer, I read a bunch of books on how to write. And one of them was on how to write crisply. I think it was under style. But the idea was just like concise writing. And he quoted Mark Twain, who says, the difference in wording is the difference between the lightning and the lightning bug.
Mm-hmm.
And all right. So here I am. I'm a business guy. You're a business guy. We've been told, everybody, like since like level 1, day 1 of preschool, they're like, you need to have an elevator pitch and you need to tell them that you're the ideal client and golly gee. So why is it that we think the elevator pitch is such a good idea?
Well, the concept of the elevator pitch is a good idea. It's supposed to be a compressed way of letting people know who you are.
Yeah.
I agree with the concept. I don't agree with the way it's been formatted in the execution. Right now, the elevator pitch is way too much telling and selling. It's too long and it's too me-centered. It's trying to tell you too much about me and trying to basically sell you on the idea of me. Well, that's not what people care about. They care about themselves. And they also maybe have 10 to 15 seconds of attention span. So I've got to, in that short time, gain their interest and let them know something that's intriguing. like JK did. I
Mm.
don't have a minute. I don't have 2 minutes. I have a few moments to intrigue, like the headline of a newspaper. Journalists have known this all the time.
Ah,
So
yes.
my introduction needs to be like a headline, not a paragraph. And so this is the art of the memory dart is we've got to condense our introduction, not to tell people a bunch of things, but to get them to say, huh, tell me more about that. Very few people do that, but that should be the goal of our introduction.
I love that. I have a mentor from college, and again, remember, engineer. So this guy was really he was trying to help me out. He said that people are like cats, and first of all, if you try to grab a hold of them, they're just going to run away. And so, if you,
True.
right? I am not a cat person. I actually don't like cats, which is and cats love me because I don't want to touch them. And so they're like, oh, if I come over next to this guy, he's not going to grab a hold of me. I can get away whenever I want. So
Yep.
I'll go hang out with this guy. And I'm like, come on. So my 10-year-old daughter loves cats and she cannot catch them, right? But anyway, he said, he goes, you treat people like cats. You have to get a feather on a string. You have to give them enough curiosity where they're like, ooh, I want to play. Not so much that they can catch it, because if they catch the feather, it's over. And
Hmm.
not so much that you can't yank it around so fast because they're like, that's not worth my time. And so getting that balance of curiosity and value and interest, I think is the great game of life. And
Yep.
as I've leaned into that, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, do you have any curiosity? We're gonna get to memory darts. I don't want to jump into there too soon early in the show, but do you have how do you keep people interested after you've delivered a memory dart?
The main way I keep people interested actually is not so much telling them more about me, it's asking about them. So,
Mm.
my great networking secret, I interview people. I do what I call
Oh,
story asking. I ask
story
them
asking.
story asking. Yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
simple concept. Storytelling is very valuable. So I have stories that I carry around in my pocket. So I tell people interesting stories, success stories and origin stories and all that.
Yeah.
But mainly, I'm going to try to bring them out, bring their stories out. So I have questions, and I'm a very curious person. So I love getting people's stories. So I very, very quickly in any interaction start getting people's stories. And sometimes it'll be as brazen as this, and it's really fun. I'll meet somebody and I'll say, "Oh, Drew, tell me your story in 60 seconds."
Oh, with a timeline
And
on the back of it. I
with a
like it.
time limit, nobody
Yeah.
does it, and it takes them by surprise, but they'll try. They'll actually try. And in trying, it makes them really think and it makes them get to the point.
Get to
But
the
in
point.
trying to get to the point, they have to skip over a bunch of stuff, but they mention things. And then I've got all this material to ask more questions about. And so sometimes I'll talk to somebody and 45 minutes in, they'll say, "Hey, wait a minute. I don't know anything about you."
What do you do? Yeah.
Yeah, mission
Like,
accomplished. I
I help
just
people get to the point. That's what I do.
I just keep pulling out stories. And so the key to great networking isn't how much you can say. It's just how many good questions you can ask to draw the person out. Everybody wants to tell their story. I want to know their stories.
This is really true. My wife and I have moved across the country a couple of times for my work, and they're wanting somebody to see you, wanting somebody to know your story is a very real thing. When you grow up in the same town or like kind of the college town, and you kind of stay around the college town, you have a group of friends, and you don't feel alone because even if you're not talking to somebody that knows you, somebody in society knows you. But you move across, like we moved 16 hours away, and we found ourselves kind of vomiting our story on people all the time. And I was like, man, there's a natural human urge to be seen and to be known. So I love that you bring that out in people. I think that's
Well,
so cool.
the most fascinating part of anybody is their origin story. So everybody has an origin story, and every origin story has crazy twists and turns. So
Mm.
I was doing a workshop at a conference recently, one of my favorite ones, which was helping the participants in the workshop develop their origin story in 4 short sentences. I started here, then this happened. That's the twist. Always everybody's got a
Then this
fascinating
happened.
then this happened. Now I'm here and here's where I'm heading. So I had them co-develop their stories with each other and then tell these stories. So this was it was teaching them how to network using stories, but they were in fact during the session networking with each other. Well, it got loud and crazy, which it should. In that network, these people were learning each other's stories, networking. They were swapping LinkedIn they were actually getting to know each other.
They were connecting. Yes,
They
I
were
love it.
connecting right there in the workshop, which is the funnest thing in the world, because this is networking. Once you get below the level of factual exchange, title exchange into these stories, everybody has a completely unique and fascinating story. And sometimes it's the craziest stuff. People, that were going to be race car drivers, people that were going to be astronauts, which is what I originally wanted to be, people that were, going to be this and that and the other. And as soon as you get into that stuff, you're digging into somebody's soul, and then it's so much more interesting.
I love this. Again, like I said, I've moved across the country a couple of times, and when you leave, after you leave your second company, so I got promoted up, then I got moved over, and then somebody else stole me, blah blah blah. But when you leave your second company, you realize that there's no such thing as a career ladder. There's just people, and we're all just standing out here on this, metaphysical plane, seeing each other and connecting with each other, and you're just trying to find people that you want to work with, people that have competency, but really people that have clarity and character.
It's a pinball machine. Basically, our lives are a pinball machine. It's a boom, 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 and that's the fascinating part of it. There are almost no people left anymore that go to one job and stay. There are
Yep.
very few people who go right up a ladder and that's it. Those are completely the exception nowadays. And so you end up with all these kind of crazy stories. And
Yeah.
then you can say, well, what did you learn there? What did you like about that? How was the boss there? What was the climate there? And this is where we learn all kinds of wonderful things. And it is just fuel for interesting discussion.
Man, I totally agree. And learning to get past the what do you do information exchange is really difficult. So I'm just going to let the audience off the hook here. If you're sitting here thinking, yeah, I do want to do that, man, it's going to be hard. The truth is, it is hard. But you are called the Clarity King. Oh, sorry, the King of Clarity. King of Clarity.
Mhm.
Now, is that a self moniker, or did somebody bestow that upon you?
Someone bestowed it upon me, and then I ran with it. So, years back on my Facebook timeline, it was my birthday, and my friend Chris Brogan said, "Happy birthday to the King of Clarity," and I looked at that and I said, "Ooh, that's pretty good
Ooh.
branding. I like that." And it was kind of ballsy to take that on and run with it, but I thought, that's really cool because there can only be one king of something, and and you know being a New England boy, you don't try to draw attention to yourself or take a presumptuous title, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to take that and run with it. And it was a really smart move, because I don't care if you forget 99 things, you don't forget that you've been talking to the King of Clarity. And if I can occupy that one little pixel in your brain,
Yep.
that's the key to being referable. You're only going to get a little space in somebody's brain. And that's what my first book is all about. If you're going to be referred, you've got to occupy a little space like JK does. I went to law school, so you don't have to. If you remember the King of Clarity, I win. If
Yeah.
you're if you're just another consultant, you're forgettable. So every one of us has to find a way to encapsulate our differentiator, our value, into some kind of vivid package of words, and that's a memory dart.
And that's a memory dart. I love this. Actually, I use a version of memory darts to manage culture in organizations. The short version of what I tell folks is that when you're the leader, is culture is your number one job, because culture leads to momentum, and momentum leads to to progress. And if you're not controlling your culture, someone else is, and we used to call that mutiny. And something you say, okay, right?
Yes.
And so sometimes you hire some. There's a couple of organizations where I know that the culture owner of the organization is like the COO, or sometimes it's the HR manager, sometimes it's the spouse of the founder. But so the founders after doing the work, and then the spouse like kind of holds the soul of the organization. But your memory darts is how I teach people. I call them culture scripts, but it's how I teach leaders to constantly reinforce the culture in their organization. Is you have to have a 12 syllable. I don't know where I came up with 12 syllables. I mean, this has been over a decade ago, and just somewhere in my gut, I was like, I think all truth is 12 syllables. So if you can't neck it down to a 12 syllable punchy thing, you haven't got it figured out yet. Do you think it's 12 syllables? Do you think it's less? Do you even have a measurement on that size?
I tend to think of it in terms of a few words or 10 seconds or whatever, but it's bite size. It's small. It's
Yeah.
much smaller than most people think. And the tendency of all human beings is to try to make it too much, too big, too many words, be like an engineer. And I tell people, look, nobody wants your haystack. They want the needle.
Ooh.
Don't make
Ooh.
them dig through the haystack to find the needle. Your job as a communicator is to give them the needle. And that's not just in branding and memory darts. That's in all forms of communication. If you emails, presentations, podcasting, everything, your job as a communication designer is to bring out the needle and say, here's the point. And then if somebody needs more details, then you progress to more details. But it's brain friendly to be the one that highlights the main point. It's brain hostile to dump too much information on people and say, you sort it out.
So there's a similar thing that happens, right? Is when you and I meet and we're like, I like this guy. Yes, I like this guy. I'm like, hey man, if there's anything you ever need, can I help you out? Or if you need, just give me a call. Like it sounds nice, but what it really is, it's lazy on my side. Because now I'm asking you to process everything you know about me and decide the one needle you might need from me. And then maybe, since it gets weird, maybe sense of business my way. So is there a reverse memory dart? So here I am, we met, we shook hands, and I said, I can overhaul your culture in 90 days, something like that. And then we leave. And how should I leave that conversation? Do you have a leave, like an exit memory dart?
Yeah, there are a couple things I sometimes say. People, disqualifiers, people that I don't want to work with or don't want to work with me. One of them is, humility. If somebody's not humble, if they're not willing to actually listen and question things, and they don't want to actually rethink things, they're not going to want to hear from me. I tell uncomfortable truths. I question stuff. Somebody will come to me with a bunch of gibberish and jargon, and I'll tell you this is garbage, and this is what you really want to do. So you've got to have the humility to say, okay, I really need help. And the other H is you've got to have hunger. You've actually got to say, my business isn't working. I need to be better at this. I'm not succeeding. And I have this drive. Here's the thing. Every single human being on this planet, except for one, needs clarity. Everyone. 8 billion people need clarity.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows it. So I have this vast array of potential customers, but only a certain percentage of those people actually want to go through the process of saying, I got to have this. I must get clear. Most people are content with the status quo of gibberish, jargon, and just blah, 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 blah. That's the frustration of it, is that I know how much bad communication is going on. And most companies and people and brands and teams just put up with it. Don't care.
All right. Yes. I mean, you and I both have a common religious background, and I want to say amen right here.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I run into, especially during the COVID hybrid work situation, is the hybrid work situation really exposed a lot of how managers manage by proximity. And I don't know if you heard seagull management, where they come in, they land on your desk, they leave a pile of crap, and they just squawk around a bunch, and then they leave, right? Seagull management.
I hadn't heard that term. I like that.
Yeah. And so they just manage. And so they thought, oh, because I'm around these people all the time, these people like me, and I have a pulse on the organization because I'm around them, which has nothing to do with good management skill. It just has to do with like force of personality, and then the culture of the people that you're working with being afraid of you. It's just very unhealthy. And then hybrid comes in, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, we need to get back to the office. I'm like, maybe we just expose the fact that you didn't have real clarity around how you're managing. So you work with executive leaders, like high level leaders. You work with management teams, founders. Who do you work with? Who are your favorite clients? And I'm gonna ask you to pick one story and tell me about a client you worked with that has really seen a massive change.
I think my favorite type of people I've worked with have been leader managers who are leading a team.
Yeah.
So they have a relatively confined group that they can have significant impact on, not like
Yes.
massive groups, a team.
Okay.
And they want to help that team perform, and they have enough. They're not seagull managers, but they're there, they're present, and they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
good leadership influence. And they can create a culture of communication and excellence. They can work on these people's professional development. And so I've worked with a couple people like that, and they don't want to just do a one and done. Okay, do a 2-hour workshop and we'll see you later. Maybe not. No, they want to do repeat work to help people with their personal brand, to help with their email clarity, to help with their presentation skills, because clarity encompasses a whole bunch of skills. It's not just one thing. And so I worked with one fella at a pharma group, and we worked on his own personal career development first. We got his personal brand squared away, which tremendously impacted his development.
Oh
Then
yeah.
he brought me in to work on his department team brand identity, what you would have called culture,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah. Yeah.
phenomenal. We came up with their identity, and then we worked on their emerging leaders program and helped them. And then then their department got bigger, and we worked on the new brand identity, and then we worked on more, and then we worked on, and it kept escalating up. So we had this collaborative work where we kept doing more and more, and then it became a global thing. And so once you get this buy-in, and it starts expanding into more groups, that's the ideal setting. But it started with a very personal epiphany with that person. He saw the impact on his life, and he said, this is going to impact so many others, and I'm going to help lead them into it.
I love that. I've gotten to see the reason that, like, the moment for me when I was like, oh, I should start coaching seriously, or really consider this. I've always enjoyed people development. Was I had a guy that I'd worked with as a friend. He immediately got promoted, and then he worked with his team, and then all of them got promoted. This was in the Air Force, and it was that second order when I saw the techniques that I was using, that I could, like, the repeatable techniques, and I saw them changing lives kind of on that second order. That's when I got super excited about it, because now you're not just changing one guy, you're changing a whole department. You're changing, and then all of their customers and everybody that ripple effect starts touching. That's exciting, man. That's exciting.
It really is. And I love hearing from people when I've worked with them on their introductions, or worked with them on their LinkedIn profiles, or worked with them on their LinkedIn brands, or their personal brands, and hearing from them a year or 2 years or 3 years later, and seeing the way that they present themselves, on LinkedIn or at a trade show booth or whatever, and seeing the way they have avoided becoming a commodity and keeping a focus and keeping a message clear. I just love that.
Yeah. I'm kind of just reflecting on the mentors that have hammered on me pretty hard, and how I didn't understand that to begin with. And then as I began seeing the impact. So tell me, all right, so here I am, I'm a young leader, maybe middle man, like the leader of leaders, right? Not the first level lead, but somewhere in there where I have influence over a team. what are the symptoms that I begin feeling when I should start reaching out to you? So, example, my knee starts hurting. I'm like, man, I want to keep running. My knee starts hurting. I go in the doctor. Then we start working on my knee and we get it fixed. What are the symptoms that people feel right before they start working with you?
So when you start moving up the scale on leadership clarity, you start running into problems with misunderstanding with the people below you.
Mm,
You're not
yep.
giving clear directions. People are not really understanding what their roles are. Expectations are not being spelled out. Yeah, people are leaving meetings without a clear understanding. So this goes beyond things like, a brand message or your LinkedIn profile. This goes into things like jargon and foggy directions. This goes into
Oh my
things
goodness.
like not following up and saying, this is exactly what I expect. Some of this goes all the way back to very foggy, generic job role descriptions in the hiring process that move into foggy job role descriptions when somebody is actually brought on and onboarded. And then job role expectations that shift and change and are left foggy, and then people are set up for failure. And it's up to that leader to say, this is exactly what I'm looking for. These are the three things that are most important. This is the percentage of time I'm expecting you to spend on these. It's left in this vague cloud up here.
Yes.
That's the clarity that often leaders are not giving. And then people are floundering.
So, all right, and I'm just going to try to as I'm putting on the persona here. Here's the objection. But if I get that clear, won't I be a jerk? Like, isn't the boss that is that precise? Isn't that something I don't want to work for? Aren't they going to be stifling? And so,
only if
talk to
you're
me about that.
only if you're stupid. I mean, I'm not talking about being rude. I'm talking
Right.
about saying, this is what I want you to do. The vast majority of employees are just begging for you to say, what do you want?
That's right. They
Just
want to do a good
tell
job. They came here to do
yeah,
a good job.
tell me what good looks like. And so many leaders are not telling what good looks like. They're not defining their terms. They're not prioritizing. They're not saying, this is what I expect in this time frame here, or they're shifting it all, or sometimes shifting it without telling you, except later on when you find out you didn't actually do what you thought they wanted, but they decided 2 weeks ago that that wasn't what they wanted, but they never told you that.
So I run into this. This is the phrase that I hear a lot is, man, why don't my employees just get it?
Yeah.
They're, or my employees don't get it. Why can't they just get it? Some version of that. And that statement is actually a clarity problem with you, the leader,
Yes.
because you haven't said, this is what I want.
Yep.
Or here's an ambiguous situation, and these are my priorities in which I want you to. So in the military, we call that the rules of engagement. So here's some rules of engagement to define this hyper ambiguous situation, and understand, as long as you did your best to follow my rules and my priorities, I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
And even if if things get hairy, again, you're the guy on the ground. I trust you, and that level of trust empowers an organization to start performing at a high level. But
Hmm.
so often, folks are especially, I find this generational gaps is that the older generations will be like, the younger generation just doesn't get it. I'm like, pause. Are you assuming that they understand these kind of unwritten cultural rules that came in from your parents and your schooling? Because the kids today, um, I feel like I'm talking a little bit too long, but I do want to share this quick story. When I came back from COVID, so there's this guy named Nick. He's in my town. He and I would be best friends. It's just that we live far enough away from each other, and our circles are slightly different, so we're not. But like, we really like each other. We hadn't seen each other for like 2 years during COVID. So like, I was like, hey, let's go grab some coffee. We went and grabbed coffee, and we could not connect
Mm.
because during COVID, he was binging these shows and I was binging these shows, and there wasn't that common sports thread that there normally was
Yeah.
that year,
Yep.
and all the little like the little bumps where we all have the same things that we go to or whatever. Those cultural threads got lost, and all of
Mm.
a sudden, these two people who really connect and like each other can't have a conversation because our cultures are wrong.
Yep.
And so when you're in the organization, whose job is it to fix that? Hint, it's not the employee's job. It's the leader's job to get clarity on what they're expecting and then clarity on how to explain that.
And then on the team level, it's not just the manager, leader, and that single employee. It's actually making sure that the team members know each other's roles specifically. So I was
Yes.
working with one team on their personal brand clarity, and something emerged that there was one relatively new team member that other people were misunderstanding her role. And it came right out in that group meeting that it
Yes.
wasn't clear because the title didn't actually match the exact role, that she was being people were throwing stuff at her, and it wasn't in her job, and there was a tension going on, which we had to resolve right there awkwardly, because the guy that was the head of the department was right there. We had to fix it right there because there was non-clarity about the shape of her role. So that's the kind of stuff that happens all the time.
I have an organization in my life. It's a volunteer organization that I volunteer in. And the leadership has recently said, listen, we're all the same. We're all on one team. I'll take out the trash. Like nobody's higher or lower than anybody else. So and they literally removed all the titles from the organization. And I went to them privately and they did not listen to me, but I went to them privately and I was like, listen, guys, I'm here. I'm still in the team. I'm here to support, but I cannot express how important it's going to be to put those titles back and to put because it's clarity. This is exactly why I said that. And I said, now, and I challenged them because we had that type of relationship. I said, I want to know, are you removing the titles because you're embarrassed of the responsibility and the weight of your title? Right. And they are like, no, you're right. I did not win the battle. Maybe I shouldn't have had the conversation. But there is a tendency for soft skill leaders, people that have a high EQ, who want team unity, to kind of fuzz the lines, but that's actually not a good thing.
No.
Do you have any rules of thumb that you offer to leaders who are already pretty self-aware as to when they should be clear and when they should be flexible and offer kind of a room for ambiguity?
I think by and large, you should err on the side of clarity always. And there are situations that are by their nature ambiguous. Okay, we can't control everything, and the world is full of ambiguity. COVID certainly reminded us of a world full of ambiguity, and now we're getting another dose of it with AI. So,
Oh, yeah.
in a world of ambiguity and high speed, the need for clarity is even greater. So, we can't control all that ambiguity, but a leader that has a level of confidence and a level of clarity and says, look, these are the things we can't do anything about, but this is the course we're going to chart. That's even more important. And acknowledging the reality of the situation, not being a dunderhead and saying, look, I have all the answers, but saying, here's what we can do about the situation. People are going to be starving for that. We need that badly. And the best leaders provide some kind of path forward, some sort of lighthouse in the fog. And, that's just the way it is. Most people respond to that. We need that. And it's going to be important for leaders to have some kind of confidence and courage that comes from a level of clarity, not just drown in the ambiguity like everybody else.
I love that you brought up. I think that's super powerful. All right, I'm going to switch the show around here a little bit because I want to give people a taste of what it's like to work with you. You and I have talked a little bit. I'm starting a impact investing firm with some friends here in town. They've asked me to spearhead this. So imagine a venture capital firm whose function is to inspire and then fund new ventures that solve social problems. One example would be kids aging out of the foster care system. How can we get real estate for them? How can we get mentorship for them? Because they literally have no support network. I don't have there's a lot of data on the problems in that area, but I don't have solutions for it. Another example might be our aging electrical grid. If we want to move to AI, we need a lot more power. Also, if we go to war with China at some point, our electrical grid's so traditionally, these things have been solved by government, but the Jubilee Capital, the firm that we're just now launching, is to try to help communities be more resilient and kind of basically solve their own problems at the community level rather than going up to the guy with the orange hair and saying, "Can you come in here and send troops?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being political. I was just poking a bear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if that's kind of my problem set, how would we begin working together? Because I want the audience here to experience what it's like to work with you.
So the starting point is, and sometimes you have to pardon me when I think I look off camera. So typical professor type. I'll try to look at the camera, but I probably won't.
No, that's okay.
You have to start with emotional awareness of the issue. Okay, emotional
Ooh.
awareness. You can't talk about abstractions. Abstractions don't get attention. So by bringing up a couple of examples like that, in both cases, you're talking about what I would call hidden vulnerabilities. Okay, so these are hidden vulnerabilities, and
Yeah.
they should frighten us and concern us. And so if you just say hidden vulnerabilities, that doesn't mean anything to me. If you bring up electrical grid and AI, okay, I've read some stuff about that. Even more moving is aging out of the foster care system. That's very human.
Yeah.
And then if you say these are problems that typically people try to address way up here at these governmental things, but you and we as communities, there are things we can do. Really? That's a radical thought.
Yeah.
Now you've got my attention, because I never, literally, actually, I never thought that. What do you mean? Tell me about that. So that's the first thing. You've touched my emotions, and you've injected a radical thought. All right. So now you've got my interest. Tell me more. And then venture capital. How does venture capital fit into that? All right. Tell me about that. And then I want some example of, tell me how that would work in a simple way. Don't get way off into outer space, but give me some way that an electrical grid can be improved in central Kentucky. Give me some way that somebody did something to help kids in the foster care system that was local and impactful. And if you can give me a story, because the stories are what's going to hammer that nail down, then I'm going to say, there's hope. There's real hope. So the theme of hidden vulnerability is there, and then the possibility is there, and then the reality is there if you've got a story, and then you're off and running. I mean, then you've got it. But you can't, if it's way up at 30,000 feet, I'm not interested. So that's a start anyway.
Yeah, no, actually, and just for the audience, I literally just threw that out here cold. So this is just an example of what working with Steve is like. It's super. Actually, the idea of hidden vulnerabilities is super helpful to me, because it's kind of a concept of highlighting hidden vulnerabilities and then empowering local communities to solve those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mechanism of venture capital is just one of the mechanisms. We're also going to be using a prize system. There's a really cool literature on this thing called an X Prize, which is kind of not germane to the show today, but is a mechanism. So venture capital and the X Prize are mechanisms to empower the local community to solve these hidden vulnerabilities, which is
right. And there's a frustration that we all have that big government. Okay, so you also, one of the important things is you got to have a bad guy. You always have to have a bad guy that you're positioning something against. The bad guy in this case is big government never gets the job done. Okay, it doesn't matter who's in office; it's big government. So when you talk about venture capital, innovation, X Prize, hey, local, okay. Now you're talking to the David and Goliath factor that I like. All right, you mean we can do something? Yes, that's cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's empowering the local David and Goliath to attack the problems that are affecting their community that the guy with orange hair can't solve.
Yeah, Washington is always the bad. Big whatever, big
Yeah.
Washington, big oil, big pharma, big education. Always we have a built-in bad guy for something that's local or something that's small and innovative. And one of the best marketing and branding tactics is to identify whatever the bad guy is. It doesn't always have to be big something, but we have this instinctive desire to help the little guy, help the good guy.
Yeah. Okay, well, we are running out of time in the show, and intentionally I'm going to stop it there because I want you all to see. I mean, that was literally maybe 5 minutes, probably 2 minutes of kind of deep dive there on the project that I'm working on. If you are a leader in an organization and you know that you need some more clarity to move your team to the next level, that's what it's like to work with Steve. But enough of me talking. Steve, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes here just to speak to the audience and close out the show for us.
Okay. I did drop one reference earlier. I said there is one person on the planet I cannot help, and that is Brother Dominic on a deserted island under a vow of silence, who doesn't need to communicate. Can't help that guy. But
right.
Anybody else, marketing, sales, everybody needs to communicate. And I ask people all the time in my workshops, what percentage of time in your job do you spend communicating or preparing to communicate?
Mm.
And the vast majority, it's 70 to 95%. And I'm dealing mostly with, white collar professionals. What that means is most people's job at a major strata of our economy, most people's job is communication. That's their job. Doesn't matter the company, doesn't matter the role, doesn't matter the industry. It's communication. So this is the greatest opportunity we have to improve and to succeed, is to be better communicators. Whether it's a little introduction, whether it's a sales pitch, whether it's marketing, whether it's branding, whether it's all of the above. And so that's why I've been fascinated with it for 40 years. That's why I've written books on it. That's why I do workshops on it. That's why I do one-on-ones, because I really do believe that if we can learn the principles, and they're very simple principles and skills and practices of how to get to the point and how to be effective. That's the key to success, especially and okay, big guy, small guy, my heart is for individuals, consultants, small businesses. These are the people I want to see win. I don't have anything against big companies. Actually, many of my clients have been big companies, huge companies. But the small businesses, the startups, the companies, the consultants, how do we rise above all this noise? How do we do that? By being really sharp communicators and by being like JK, I went to law school, so you don't have to. By rising above, having a really sharp, compelling message. That's the only way we win. But we can do that. If we don't need $1 million marketing and sales campaign, we just need to be good with words and really clear on where we're going. And same with leaders. Way leaders win by being very clear. So I just think that, we chase after so many things, whether it's AI or whatever other exotic thing. We pour billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I look back at all the stuff I've hammered out on clarity, and you know what? It's been the same thing for generations. Every great writer, every great speaker, it's all the same stuff. We've known this stuff for all these years. The same people that have succeeded have done the same things always. And we can follow in their footsteps. And it doesn't take a PhD. It's not rocket science. We just have to be simple, clear, and vivid. So
I love it.
That's what I'm going to keep doing.
Well, Steve is being a little bit modest here. Steve is an amazing communicator, as you can already tell. He's written several books. You can find him at stevewoodruff.com. That's stevewoodruff.com. He's got several books out. The newest book is called The Point, Get to the Point. And if you want to learn the principles and the methods that he has, read that. If you need some help personally from Steve, reach out to him at stevewoodruff.com. And seriously, if you are a mid-level professional, you're maybe that manager, that third level manager who has a team that they can control, and you said, listen, it's time in my career to make a difference. My job, the next level is when I focus down and become really crisp and start driving my team, my peers, and the organization as a whole. Get with Steve. Tell him you saw him on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Find that clarity and get to the point. And we are out.